important discussion on the seismic shift in the procurement landscape and how you can prepare for the changes ahead. I'm your host, Bridget Pepe with ProcureAbility, and I'm so excited to be joined by Mathew Schulz, the founder of Matchat. Mathew is a trusted voice in modern procurement and has a wealth of experience in the field. So we'd love for this to be interactive. So in the chat, why don't you go ahead and just let us know where you're tuning in from? And if you have questions, you can drop them in there as well. So good morning, Matt. I'm so excited to talk to you today. How are you?
Bridget, what's going on? Happy 2025.
Same to you. Same to you.
How are you?
I'm good. Good. Little cold here in Georgia today.
Yeah. Gosh, did you just get a bunch of snow too?
No, that went more north of
North?
me. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, to the disappointment of
Oh,
my children.
yeah. Well, calling in from Boston. Where is everybody? Can we see the chat? Where are they calling in from?
Let's see. Uh, haven't seen
It's
anybody
cold
yet.
here.
Yeah, I'm sure. All right. Well, while people join and start chiming in, you ready to get started?
Let's go for it.
All right. So, Matt, as someone who's been at the forefront of next gen procurement, what do you think is the most significant change in the procurement landscape for 2025?
Yeah. Gosh, great question, right? Everybody wants to know early January, what does 2025 look like? Let's do this. Let's take a step back because I think it's super. Oh, I'm seeing a ton of people. We got Nashville, Detroit, Philly. Welcome
Absolutely.
everybody.
Yes.
Let's step back. I think it's helpful. It'll give some context here, especially on how I'm thinking through it.
Mhm.
So, um, guilty. Like, I went to school for economics, economist trained. So I'll talk about macro and micro, and I think they're important. Macro. Look, everybody knows it sounds weird to say, but like with COVID, you had a bunch of supply chain disruptions. And then that was followed by all these macroeconomic financial service issues. You had banks, high interest rates. It really put supply chain and procurement in the headlines. And for good reason, right? Businesses needed the things to make the thing they sold. And when
Yeah.
you can't do that, gosh, like everyone starts paying attention. You know, I did allude to the fact that financial services, you had high interest rates. Companies wanted to save money. It was kind of this like back-to-back procurement supply chain headline approach, and everyone was like, "Well, who's procurement? What's going on here? Like,
Mhm.
we're here. We've been here. We do other things besides cost savings." And that's important to look at from a a macro perspective, because on the micro, how businesses then adjust what they're doing according to the larger economy. And there in lies probably the biggest thing, which is how are businesses adjusting to those macroeconomic changes so that they can continue to drive revenue and grow? And I think you've got an influx of modern technology that's hit the space ever since, call it 2017, 2018. Spend
Mhm.
orchestration tools have come. I probably call it software 3.0. And you're starting to see AI. I think we're going to send up, or you sent out a poll yesterday or two
Mhm.
days ago, right? We'll see some of the statistics from that. AI is here. It's certainly changing things and has already changed things. So for 2025, my expectation is more AI, and I'm sure we'll get to it later. People.
Absolutely. Yeah, people. I think sometimes we always forget to talk about that people aspect, right? We're so focused on the technology. So yeah, I'm happy that you brought that up and looking forward to talking to that. So you're right, Matt. We did send out a LinkedIn poll and ask that same question and ask our viewers to weigh in. So let's take a look at those results now.
Awesome.
Are they up? Oh, there we go. Yeah. So just like you predicted, AI right at the top. So what do you make of these results, Matt?
60. Hold on, 61%. Digital platform adoption, 18%. Okay, so I mean, look at that. The statistics are there. That's you're
Yeah.
closing in on 80%. Or how does the modern technology stack? How do the modern tools, and of course with it, AI, then affect the things that I'm doing as a practitioner or how my business is looking at it? Because I think there's some irony here, right? It's procurement buys the goods and services a business needs to be
Mhm.
in business. And with that, we often look at it more narrowly, or we've been talking about it. It's, well, what does the new procurement technology look like, or new financial technology? But that also includes all the sales tools, marketing tools, anything that IT is buying. And it's so important because they're all infusing AI as well. So again, that probably doesn't surprise me.
Mhm.
2024, you had, gosh, it's as if every conference you went to, there were panels and conversations about AI and what that looks like. Towards the tail end of 2024, I heard a lot about agentic AI, and rightfully so. There was this idea of like, oh, should I buy or should I build that internally? And agentic is, well, how do I take something beyond just a chatbot to then help me and this business again grow?
Mhm.
I think some of the fundamentals there are, well, gosh, we're waiting for the models to catch up, right? It's
Mhm.
like almost every week somebody is releasing something new. And if you didn't notice, OpenAI in the end of 2024 did like a 12 days of Christmas. Every day they released something new, which is pretty exciting. So again, that doesn't surprise me that AI is probably at the top. People are wondering, how do I use it?
Mhm.
Back to people, what does that mean for my job? Very
Yeah.
interesting. Cool poll.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So, from your perspective, what are the most exciting things happening in procurement right now? And how do you think they're going to change the future of the field? For example, we talked about AI. How do you see AI and machine learning playing in procurement? And how can procurement professionals leverage these technologies to drive greater efficiencies and effectiveness?
Well, I think since I already talked to the idea of AI and agentic, maybe we can go a little deeper on that.
Mhm.
Um, and I had the privilege of working with a procurement technology company and many of the founders in the space. And what I'm learning, not only from them, but their engineers, on what they want to do. What does their technology roadmap look like? I think we've had some fits and starts with RPA, this idea of like robotic processing, automations. You've got a lot of workflow tools that have hit the market. And
Mhm.
with that, you are seeing some of the more laborious manual effort led things that practitioners have done in the past are being automated, which is great because a lot of the narrative right now is, gosh, I want to be strategic. I know what's going on in the business. I can help. And I do so much more than cost savings, which is true. And now because we have that modern influx, the modern tools here, they're helping us automate some of the things that we would button click. And
Yep.
that's great because now, gosh, as a practitioner, I always use that as an advantage. I would take full advantage of modern tools to kind of automate the mundane work so that I could be front and center and working with my stakeholders. And I see that as where the future of the function is heading. Now, back to AI, what does that mean? Well, I've seen some pretty amazing things. Some of it I'll hold back simply because of NDAs. However,
Mhm.
this idea of automating some of the sourcing, right? Like, what does it look like to go out where I used to spend as a negotiator a significant amount of time capturing information so that I could go to the negotiation table
Mhm.
relatively prepared? Well, now I'm using AI and or tools to help me do that. It's automating that sourcing in those activities. I'm interested to see where that market goes because I think we've got a good idea of where automation will continue to happen. Things like POs pre-populating, invoices pre-populating. I'm
Yeah.
now not clicking buttons and I'm confident on what that can do. That's
Mhm.
again beyond exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love seeing the evolution. I've been in this
Yeah.
industry a really long time and I've seen from paper POs to, how big it was when we didn't have to file them anymore, right? And it went
Look,
electronic.
think about that. Paper POs. I'll Bridget, I got a quick story. I'll never forget this. I'm working in the public sector and I was implementing technology tools to help automate literally manual based processes. And somebody was like, "Oh yeah, Matt, that's the green sheet." And I was like, "Well, okay, well, what is that? That sounds interesting." It was literally like the piece of paper that was green, and we would follow that sheet up and down the floors across desks. And think about it, like if somebody was out on vacation for the week or
Mhm.
they were sick, that green sheet would sit on their desk. It would be
Yeah.
in the inbox through like a manila folder.
Yeah.
I'm with you. I've been around long enough to see that, which it's fascinating. I mean, I'm glad we can laugh and joke about it, but
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
the reality. And here's the thing: there's still some businesses and companies that they're still doing that. Like
Yeah.
it's still part of their process and workflow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So let's talk about preparation is key to success, right? So, Matt,
Yeah.
what are some key skills or competencies that procurement professionals need to develop in order to thrive in these changing times?
Oh, gosh, I think it's a great question, and I look back at things, cliche to say, but I'll do it. Like
Yeah.
people, process, technology, and I
Hmm.
think it's a great way to kind of encapsulate where folks can focus. I've changed the narrative and I've put them into those buckets, but different titles. So I start off with business acumen, and for me, this was a way like my bread and butter was going into companies and standing up procurement functions from scratch.
Hmm.
And in order to do that well, I needed to understand the business. So I spent a significant amount of my first 30, 60, 90 days meeting with individuals to understand what it was they were doing to help this company. So, business acumen. I want to know how this business makes money. It's super important. If there are multiple revenue streams, great. I would like to know them and proportionally which ones bring in more money because in the back of my head, I'm thinking, ooh, if I can help them drive revenue and do their job well, not only do I look good, they look good, but the organization looks good. And that's super important. So business acumen, again, probably liken it back to, like thinking through from an economics perspective. The second, and gosh, we've touched on it quite a bit already,
Yeah.
technology literacy. I think it's so important to feel comfortable around technology. Like AI, the models are the worst they're ever going to be. They get incrementally better. Same
Hmm.
thing with some of the new spend orchestration tools we've seen hit the market. They're getting better. You've got some of the legacy tools that are partnering with other modern tools. Together, they are getting better. So, feeling comfortable using those tools and technology, it's paramount. How do you do that? Gosh, there are certifications, there are courses. Fundamentally, some of the easiest thing is like carve out some time in your schedule to take a demo, learn what the tool looks like, how it's used from the people who are building and creating it. I think that's super important. There are also some newsletters out there that I think are extremely helpful.
Hmm.
Some folks talking specifically about technology. So, one, you've got business acumen. Two, you've got technology literacy. And three, back to the people, relationship building. I think you've seen a lot of marketing, a lot of content creators and folks on social media talking about people and strategy and value add and value
Hmm.
creation. And it's great. Guilty. I'm out there doing the same thing because I think it's super important. The work behind that, right, is how do I actually then network and create connections, not only within procurement and the supply chain space, but also outside of it. Because,
Hmm.
as we talked about earlier, the irony is that procurement buys on behalf of the business and it's everything. So I market, or rather, I connect with a lot of marketing folks or sales
Hmm.
folks. One, I stay current with technology. I find that to be super helpful. So those are the three buckets that I usually focus on: people, process, tech, but business acumen, tech literacy, and then also building relationships.
Yeah,
Oh,
the relationship
oh,
part is so key, so key.
yeah.
Even as we do become more, automated and technology based, we still need to have those relationships to keep growing. I think we all learned during COVID how to interact virtually, right? And we continue to evolve and do that. But yeah, it's definitely key to keep those relationships going.
It totally is, and almost even more so now than it ever was. I think you're right. COVID heightened it, right? I think
Mhm.
human behavior came to the forefront, which it was always there, but maybe we got so caught up in our 9 to 5, driving to the office and back, and now look, working from home. And what does a hybrid office look like? How do I then connect with my colleagues virtually and or in person, or find time? And here's the thing: it's like it's more than just finding that. People are like making time for it because it's literally that important. I like it. Here, we've got some questions coming in. What is
Yeah, I was
this?
gonna say we're have lots of questions, so you want to pick
Mm.
one and go for it. So let's see.
Ruth, AI tools are good, but not all. Yeah, Ruth, you're absolutely right. I Here's something that I've picked up along the way.
Mhm.
I've seen a lot of companies because they're still trying to understand how do I harness this new technology, and like the other side of that is risk. How do I reduce risk with these tools? Because if I'm putting all of my IP, my proprietary information into a model, like, am I getting that back? How are they using it? I've seen a lot of companies, they're preparing for it and have in 2024. I'm sure it'll multiply in 2025. They want to, they're almost putting together these like, you've got like a group of people that are in the business across the business that are working to understand it and how they want to implement the tool and technology. They're also determining whether or not they want to go and buy a model or
Mhm.
if they want to create it in-house. I think it goes well beyond prompt engineering, but super important to do. I think a bit unfortunate for some that aren't adopting as quickly, but hey, that's the curve. There are early adopters, and then the majority comes in later. Yeah, I'm guilty. I'm looking at my phone here. Like, I want the latest phone. And January 15th, the new Apple Intelligence just updated, which is great. I'll be curious to
Yeah.
see what it does. What do we
Yeah.
have here? AI help to avoid complete manual intervention in day to day? Well, great question.
Yeah.
I think we've already seen this, right? AI has come in and enhanced some of the automation and workflows. You
Right.
heard me say pre-populating POs or invoices, or just some of the things that we've done more manually.
Hmm.
Renewals are a great example. A significant portion of the spend within a business is renewal focused. So we know that's coming up. Well, so does AI, thanks to its abilities. And it can then take the information that we usually have to then fill out and do it for us. It also can send out a notification to the stakeholder. And now we're working
Hmm.
again, back to what you said,
Right.
people to understand like, hey, is this marketing tool that you use to do lead generation still the tool that you want to use? Or maybe we're taking AI and understanding the market. It's like, here are three new tools that we should be exploring. Should we do an RFP? Should we think about
Right.
bringing these tools into the market? Because maybe they'll generate more leads, and leads go to sales, and sales close, and everyone does better.
Yeah.
Fascinating nonetheless.
Absolutely. I like this question. How can procurement managers avoid being too dependent on AI? I think
Ooh,
that's a great question because it goes back to people, right? We have to keep people involved, and you still need to manage supplier relationships, negotiations. Like, yeah, you can use AI to help prepare for those things,
okay.
but it can't do it all, right?
I I love the question and your partial answer. Like, to some extent, it's like I think there'll be some comfort. I try to use it daily. Like, I feel like I won't get better at it if I'm not using the tool,
Mhm.
or following or learning from others and watching how they're using it and in other functions. I think you're right. A lot of people have said, and what's the quote? I'm kind of forgetting it. Oh, something about AI won't replace people, but people with AI will replace people, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
I don't know either way, but I think we should definitely be using it. The dependency on it, gosh, you'll probably have half of the group say, no, we absolutely should be using it. Others that are like, no, I don't want to become dependent on it.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering, like, how do we not? It's like we're so dependent on Google, right? Like, that is
Right.
now in our lexicon.
Right.
Just Google it.
Yep.
Could you imagine going back on that? I don't know if I could.
No, I can't imagine having to go to a library and look something up anymore, right?
Card catalogs, anyone? How does Gen AI like Chat GP? You laugh because you've done that. Same. Yeah. For anyone that doesn't know, that was literally 3x5 cards in a, gosh,
Filing cabinet, you had to go look up your
filing
book.
cabinet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely.
How does
Right.
Gen AI like Chat GPT enhance procurement processes? Oh, well, here's something that a couple of folks in the spend orchestration space,
Mhm.
Raul, here's what they've shared with me. They're thinking through um, workflows, automation workflows in these tools have been built. They'll move things along. They'll push a request to legal. They'll push it to risk. They'll pull other folks into it. Now, as a requester, imagine I'm typing in via some, we'll call it a chatbot for lack of a better word here, but it's I want to buy a new marketing tool. Okay, great. AI comes back. Well, what kind of marketing tool are you looking for? Lead
Mhm.
generation, or are you looking for ads or advertising services? Right? It will help break down the questions that you're asking and get you into the correct workflow as a result of it. Or it will populate saying, have you looked at these 4 tools, of which 2 you own currently at the business?
Mhm.
Again, it's another way of putting a layer of technology onto data and information that will then, well, it'll help you make a better decision as a result.
Right.
Encyclopedia versus Google. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Uh, I was just reading this question. What role does sustainability play in next generation procurement, and how can companies balance cost efficiency with environmentally conscious sourcing practices?
Yeah,
Yeah, it's always on the forefront, right? We've talked about sustainability for years. I mean, way back when the sell was get rid of the paper, right? More
yeah,
sustainable, environmentally friendly. Go. So, any thoughts on this? On how the two will play together?
yeah. I think, gosh, it's interesting. Here's something that just, I kind of feel like I'm gonna a finger on the pulse of
Yeah.
where things are. I'll catch a few people who talk about it, and it's as if there's a new company. I'm forgetting the name of the company. New founder led. She's fantastic. It'll come to me.
Yeah.
They are focused on sustainability, um, and then on the other hand, I'll hear companies, it's not as if they're brushing it off. It's just they're not putting as much effort into it. And I'm curious why. I
Mhm.
honestly, I don't have the answer. I'm sure, given their business model, it makes sense to either put more effort into it or not. However, it's so topical. So many people are talking about it. Here's another one, similar, but it's like diversity. People are talking about diversity in different ways now. It's either we're all in on it, or gosh, that's not really a thing. Like, why are we talking about the thing that we shouldn't even be concerned about, right? Whether who makes up the business. So I'm curious. I don't have the exact answer on it,
Yeah.
but
It's a great thing to think about as we move forward and learn more and
un-
dive deeper into all these new tools. Absolutely.
undoubtedly,
Yeah. And definitely there's gonna have to be, and hey, maybe this is where AI can help, a lot of cost benefit analysis done with this, right? Because there are going to be substantial investments into these tools going forward. And does it make sense?
totally.
Absolutely. Yep.
So what do we
Yep.
got here? I'm interested in learning more about AI being used in procurement to improve supplier relationships and risk management. Can you share
Mhm.
some examples? Yeah, I think that's great. I know that there are a handful of companies that have made a splash in the market. They are building specifically for this. They are taking the
Mhm.
AI, the agentic model, and creating a business out of it. A lot of it is around sourcing. It's how do I find new vendors and suppliers in the space? Because, I mean, just look at the procurement technology space in fintech. There are a bunch of spider maps out there that highlight hundreds and hundreds. I think it's north of 400. Maybe we're closing in on 500 solutions,
Mhm.
which comparatively is actually quite small compared to like a marketing pool of technology or sales technology. So
Mhm.
that's quite interesting. I think we'll learn more as they continue to build and use the latest and greatest models, but it's inevitable. We will be using that to then go and find new technology because it's hard for an individual or even a team to do. And gosh, like AI can just run 24/7 for you and
Right.
bring something to you.
Yeah. I was just thinking, not so modern, but it kind of was the beginning of this where we started doing electronic invoice matching that took out a manual
Yes,
process. That's a great example. Or, just having more time that as we get more automated and AI takes over more and more processes, you mentioned it earlier, we have the time to sit down and do deeper risk analysis, sit down with your suppliers and talk about, what are they seeing, what are we seeing, collaboration more, I think, is
totally.
really what's going to, where AI is really going to help us free up that time to be more strategic. So I'm
Yeah.
looking at oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say you're right. If we automate the P2P, the paper pushing
Hmm.
portion of it, I can now focus my time and effort on building those strategic partnerships. I can actually reach out to the vendor and talk to them
Yeah.
monthly, bi-monthly, maybe weekly, depending on how critical they are for the business. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we're getting close to the end of our time. I know we could probably sit here all day and answer
Okay,
questions.
wow,
Talk.
already?
So my last question, Matt, out of everything we talked about today, what's the one key takeaway you want our viewers to walk away with?
Oh my gosh. Well, surprisingly, we talked a lot more about AI than I thought. Inevitable, I suppose. But guilty. I talk a lot about people because I think it's so important.
Mhm.
Look, you've got a growing community, a growing voice of individuals in the space, which I think is super, super helpful in really changing the perception of procurement, what we can do, what we should be doing.
Mhm.
Again, things like this are fantastic. I think being able to have, I mean, like, was procurement doing LinkedIn Lives a couple of years ago? Probably not.
Probably not.
So thank you to ProcureAbility. I mean, I think this is, you're spot on with what you're doing. It's fantastic. Um, Focus on the people.
Great. I love it. Well, thank you everybody so much for joining. This was so much fun. And I really hope we get to do it again
Yeah.
soon. Thank you, Matt, for your time. This was really informative.
Bridget, this was awesome. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Really appreciate it. California. Jeez.
I know, everywhere.